I worked as a pin-up model for various advertising agencies for over 20 years. I often came to the USA for this reason, partly because of my job. I also experienced part of Route 66 there. When I got a glimpse of the flair of the road, even if only briefly, I was hooked on the route, like many of you probably were. That's why it was clear to me that if time allowed, I would drive the entire route at least once. Hi, I'm Babette from Rocky, and this is my companion, the Route Bear. We would like to invite you on our journey on Route 66 across America. From Chicago, Illinois to Santa Monica in California. In episode 19, I am still traveling in Arizona, visiting Williams, the city that calls itself the gateway to the Grand Canyon. In Seligman, I meet a great personality and show you the boneyards. I have now left the town of Flagstaff behind me and continue to search for clues in a more wooded area. A wooden gate blocks my way on the historic Route 66. The former section is guarded by cows and bulls roaming freely. The ox is attacking me. They are looking at me very closely, perhaps because I am driving a red car. Next to the gate is a sign that explains the section behind it in detail. The road behind the wooden gate is known as Brenningen Park Road and was the route from 1931 to 1941. The road led through the Kailab National Forest. From the air, you can still see the former unpaved Mother Road and the tall pine and aspen trees very impressively. The route was created by spraying hot oil onto pebbles or ash. Unfortunately, it is no longer accessible by car, but it is definitely worth a long walk. This is also the highest point on Route 66 at 2,257 meters above sea level. After about a kilometer on the hiking trail, you come to a historic spring house that supplied cars and travelers with water during its heyday. It was particularly dangerous for travelers in winter. This was probably also the reason why the route was changed in 1941. Where Brenningen Road ended is the general store in the community of parks. It was opened in 1906 in a disused freight car with a post office. Today the store is a general store with a Union gas station. Quickly pet the bear and go into the store. On the western side wall, there are cut-up oldies, eye-catchers and photo spots. The store has made a fundamental turnaround by moving the windows, the entrance and the gas pumps from the north to the south side. In 1931, when Route 66 changed from Brenningen Road, which ran behind the house, and from then on runs past the south side of the general store, the owner decided to rebuild the windows and doors. The store is literally a one-stop shop for locals and travelers. On the right side is the parking lot for visitors arriving from the woods on horseback. Right behind it is also a campground for RVs. There is a homely atmosphere inside. It houses a delicatessen as well as souvenirs and wood art. The floor and the oven are still original. Wooden walls, deer antlers, and bears everywhere. It is a shop where neighbors simply meet neighbors. This seemingly small country shop has undoubtedly seen a lot, and as a visitor I can feel how rich its history is. Homemade jams, a large selection of beers and wines, as well as a refrigerated counter with local meat are for sale here. There is also a catering service from freshly prepared breakfast to burgers or pizza. As in the past, it also houses the area's post office with a mailbox system. The general store, located directly on Route 66, was for sale for $349,000. In 1913, the Arizona Good Roads Association published a travel book with road maps to promote the state's roads. In it, the editors proclaimed that Arizona had the best dirt roads in the Union. Among these difficult stretches was the stretch of Route 66. Shortly before Williams, I stop again and show you the former route from the air. This short section of the route is in a deep sleep. It is no longer possible to drive on it, and nature is clearly reclaiming the section of the route. At the end of the disused track is a tourist attraction. Arizona, the safari park offers visitors an educational encounter with the animals in a spacious, natural environment. In Arizona, visitors drive 5 kilometers through the Ponderosa pine forest and can observe North American animals. Funny black bears, native wolves, majestic bison, these are just a few of the animals that you can see on foot, in the shuttle bus or from your own car. It only opened in 2010 and cost $15 million. The main attraction is the many young black bears. My path takes me further to Williams. Williams calls itself the gateway to the Grand Canyon. Travelers discovered the place to visit before the Grand Canyon. Williams has the honor of being the very last town on Route 66 to be bypassed by the interstate. In 1921, downtown Williams received a 1.5-mile-long graded and ash-covered road surface, replacing an earlier muddy path. Williams still looks much as it did in the 1940s, with its numerous souvenir shops, motels, diners and cafes. Here is a steakhouse with a hot rod on the roof. Williams was founded in 1881 and named after the famous trapper, scout and mountain man, Old Bill Williams. When Route 66 passed through it, construction of motels, restaurants, gift shops and gas stations boomed on the east end of Williams, creating the historic Williams Business District. Back then, there were parades with cowboys and Indians. The horses of yesteryear have now given way to V8 cars. On the first weekend in May, up to 1,000 vintage cars travel from Seligman to Williams and Tupac. The so-called Route 66 Fun Run. The event takes place on the longest remaining section of the historic Route 66. Numerous historic motels have survived here and still embody a touch of nostalgia with their huge neon advertising signs and vintage cars in front of the rooms. As of October 13, 1984, the highway bypassed Williams. This meant that car traffic no longer passed through the city center. It was the last city to be bypassed by the interstate and thus went down in history. Nevertheless, Williams continues to live off tourism. Both in its function and in its appearance, Williams embodies the spirit of the historic Route 66. Williams also lives off the tourists who visit the Grand Canyon. And I am now contributing something to that because I am now in the largest sign shop that I have seen on the entire Route 66. Travelers can find signs, souvenirs, and everything that has Route 66 printed on it here. Williams is an original Route 66 town that has barely changed and is loved by everyone. Life in Williams moves at a slower pace and comes alive at night. Neon signs, live music, and the aroma of American food waft along the historic buildings. Pete's Gas Station Museum is a small museum worth seeing. Do you remember when there were gas station attendants wearing overalls? The owners, Pete and Larry, who is also a train driver on the Grand Canyon Railroad, are happy to provide information about the sites on the 66 route and also sell souvenirs. This museum was founded in 2004. Every evening at 7 p.m., there is a shootout in the city center. Outlaws from the Wild West are shot here. The costumed villains recover quickly and come back the next evening to commit their evil deeds again. In winter, there is a lot of snow here. But in summer, there can also be forest fires. I ask Smokey the Bear Ranger what the situation is like at the moment. Williams has come up with some special ideas to get his adrenaline pumping. From the canyon coaster, a summer toboggan run, to the 66 zipline route. The unique zipline attraction takes visitors on an exciting ride over the city and offers a breathtaking view. They whiz along steel cables at almost 50 kilometers per hour. The flight takes visitors to a height of 33 meters. Below, there is an exhibition of nostalgic items. Some are even available to purchase. The Williams Loop is made up of 2 streets that run through the entire city. They are one-way streets, so you always drive past all the attractions that Williams has to offer. In summer, the train station right in the town center is the starting point for tourists who want to travel to the south entrance of the Grand Canyon on the steam-hauled Grand Canyon Railway. A raid by train robbers is included for the amusement of the 100-kilometer-long route. The train has been bringing visitors to the park for over 100 years. A beautiful diner in the typical Googie architectural style. Here I treat myself to a small bite and a hot coffee. Of course, the interior is in the style of Route 66. At the end of Williams, there is a resort where camper vans can park for the night, in the middle of the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world. Right next to it is the Mountain View Cemetery with its expressive graves and their decorations. Locals, former soldiers, and Chinese railroad workers have been buried here under the red clay since 1894. It is said to be haunted at night, and some bizarre occurrences have been documented. Instead of taking the train, I drive my Mustang to the south entrance of the Grand Canyon. The largest part of the Grand Canyon is located in the Grand Canyon National Park, in a steep 450-kilometer-long gorge that was carved into the rock of the Colorado Plateau by the Colorado River over millions of years. My first stop is the Desert View Watchtower. Even though it looks like a historic building from the outside, it is by no means a relic of times gone by. It was built around a steel framework in 1932. The Hopi Indians run a shop there with a wide range of Indian souvenirs. However, you will be asked to pay to enjoy the breathtaking view of the Grand Canyon from there. The canyon is one of the great natural wonders on Earth. Unique combinations of geological colors and erosion forms decorate a gorge that is up to 29 kilometers wide and 1.6 kilometers deep. The South Rim, which is very well developed for tourism, has numerous viewing points. The Grand Canyon overwhelms my senses with its immense size. Even if I try to bring you closer to the size and magnificence with my photos, it cannot replace the experience of standing here on the edge yourself and looking at the canyon as far as the eye can see. The Desert View Drive, which begins at the south entrance, runs 37 kilometers along the edge of the gigantic gorge. There are viewing points and rest areas along the route. Don't underestimate this view and take enough time for it at your roadside attraction. Back from my little excursion towards Route 66. Flintstone Campground and Bedrock City are places visitors should definitely make a pit stop. Bedrock City is a fictional town where the Flintstone family lives, including their houses and shops, a campground, theme park and diner. Fancy a brontosaur burger. Arizona, like elsewhere, experienced an explosion in automobile use in the 1920s, and as traffic increased, engineering standards were no longer adequate for the heavy use of the roads. Although Route 66 was continually maintained over the years, the strain continued to rise as traffic increased. 1 in 7 accidents in Arizona occurred on Route 66, leading to another, less flattering name for the road, Bloody 66. The outdated roads of the 1920s had to be rebuilt, straightened, and redesigned. But despite this, Route 66 achieved a mystical status in American history. It could not be replaced by a faster but soulless highway. Ash Fork is famous for its large number of quarries. There were many hotels, and Hollywood also found its way to the town. Several films were shot here. Certain areas were chosen as the setting for the filming of the film Universal Soldier. Apparently, because the purchase price of some of the buildings was so low, several buildings and a motel were blown up for cinematic effects in the film. The mythical 66 refused to die. By 1984, when Interstate 40 bypassed the last stretch of Route 66 in Arizona, a counter-movement to revive the old road had already developed. Now the birthplace of Route 66, as Seligman calls itself, awaits me. I get my first impression as I drive through the small town. I see a mixture of history, kitsch, and a variety of attractions. Souvenir shops, motels, and restaurants line up next to each other on the main road. This section of the historic route is the best preserved section of the Mother Road. The Aztec Motel. It was originally built in 1915 as a guest house by Juan Delgadillo. In the 1950s, additions were made, and in the 1970s, it was also a restaurant serving Mexican cuisine. A beauty salon was added, and today, in addition to comfortable rooms, travelers can also admire murals all around the motel. It offers quirky nostalgia with a high standard. This house, with its 2 entrances, is the most famous shop on the entire Route 66. It is the first souvenir shop that the Mother Road had, opened by Angel and Vilma Delgadillo. The couple shaped the history of the road like no other. Seligman was originally called Prescott Junction because of the railroad that ran through the town and led to Prescott. That was in 1886. It was a Wild West town at the time. When the railroad was relocated and led from the town of Ash Fork to Prescott, Seligman got its current name. named after the Seligman brothers who helped finance the railroad in the area. Angel and Vilma Delgadillo moved their hair salon right here on Main Street in 1972. The original shop is 1 block away on the railroad tracks. Angel Delgadillo was born in 1927 in his parents' house in Seligman. He had 8 siblings and played in his room while the headlights of the cars on Route 66 drove past his house. During World War II, the cars changed to jeeps, trucks, and military vehicles. He is also known as the guardian angel of Route 66 or the mayor of Route 66. He experienced the history of the road firsthand, from its peak to its closure and rebirth of the Mother Road. He campaigned for the preservation of Main Street of America. Numerous folders of business cards and thank you letters from satisfied customers stand in the barbershop as evidence of his hairdressing skills. Refugees on their way to California came to the barbershop during the Dust Bowl. There is only one chair here, but it has always been well occupied. Today it is a relic in the small museum. Angel has retired.
Das hier ist der berühmteste Stuhl auf der Route 66. Und er steht im Friseursalon in Seligman.
Many travelers did not miss the opportunity to get a haircut or a shave from Angel. It was one of the highlights of the route when travelers were allowed to sit in the most famous chair on the Route 66. When the highway cut off Seligman in the mid-70s, on September 22, 1978 to be precise, the town experienced an economic decline. Traffic stopped overnight. At that time, 9,000 cars drove through town every day, Angel remembers. Suddenly it was quiet in front of his shop. Before, it was almost impossible for pedestrians to cross the street. Now he would even stand on the asphalt for minutes at a time, looking into the distance, watching for oncoming cars. He told me that he thought the world has forgotten us now. He simply did not want his town to die. There was only one sign on the entire highway that even pointed to the small town. That made him angry. Angel, Vilma, and their 4 children were constantly fighting to survive. He still visits his barbershop every day. His fans immediately flock to him. Angel takes time for every visitor and fan.
How are you?
Fine.
I know you.
Remember you on me? Update.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Wow.
Yeah.
In 1984, the official name and all signs of Route 66 were removed from the road maps. Over the years, Angel talked to travelers who still found their way here and listened to their stories. They all had fond memories of the road and its roadside attractions. Route 66 was obviously a piece of American history, so why not revive the historic route? A road where you can drive slower and enjoy the scenic route. Angel was also the initiator and co-founder of the historic Route 66 Association of Arizona. When Angel wanted to follow in his father's footsteps as a barber, he completed an apprenticeship as a barber in Williams. In 1950, the time had come. He took over the business in the building where his father had been running a billiards hall and hair salon since 1922. I look at the former barber shop and billiards hall 1 block away. The building still belongs to the family today. This was once Angel's billiards hall. When Route 66 changed its route to Seligman, he moved his barber shop with him. The famous barber chair, which is still the original, moved with him, as well as 3 pool tables. In addition to the barber shop in the building, Angel and Vilma then opened the first souvenir and gift shop on Route 66. The pool tables gave way to the souvenir shop. At the end of the 80s, the small town of Seligman became the focus of worldwide interest. In 1987, the state of Arizona named the stretch of road from Seligman to Kingman, historic Route 66.
Yes, yeah. Where are you going?
Clarissa, one of the daughters, takes some time to answer a few questions for me. She also manages Angel's interview appointments. Angel has given over 3,000 interviews since she started recording.
So it started off as a duplex, and then my dad purchased it, renovated it, turned it into the barbershop pool hall. And back in 1987, this used to be the Seligman Chamber of Commerce. So they housed the Chamber of Commerce here. If anyone wanted any information about Seligman, they would call my dad or stop in and visit him. And while he was giving a haircut or shave, he'd give people a little bit of history about Seligman and businesses to purchase or homes to buy or anything dealing with the Chamber of Commerce. Then when we got bypassed by Interstate 40 in 1987, my dad's business died. He still housed the pool hall and the barbershop in here, but was thinking, how can he bring the economy back to Route 66? And he thought, or bring the economy, back to Seligman, and he thought Route 66. So he started to have his idea to get Route 66 designated historic.
You know, I got the idea of how to get the economy back for Seligman, because the town died for 10 long years, September 22nd, 1978, and I wondered for several years, how do we get the economy back? A few tourists began to come in my place of business. This was a barber shop and a pool hall. And men and women all sounded like a recording. They told me, when I was a little boy, when I was a little girl, this has got to be the highway that my parents traveled to California when it quit raining in the Midwestern states. I heard that over and over and over. So I finally said, the way to get the economy back is to ask the government to make Route 66 historic from Seligman to Kingman. Why? These people were looking for America of yesterday. I heard it over and over and over, and this is how I got the idea to get the economy back. But I didn't realize that it was going to go worldwide. Worldwide. We formed the association. We asked the state to make Route 66 historic from Seligman to Kingman. But the world ignored us. Transportation Department ignored us. Politicians ignored us. But we did not give up. And finally, our government made Route 66 historic from Seligman to Kingman, November of 19 78. So this is how I got the idea from talking to people that came into my barber shop while I'm cutting hair.
Even though Angel has given thousands of interviews, he still takes time for everyone. Much time. Even if I'm not a celebrity.
My father and my mother came from Mexico in 1917. By 1922, he built that building right there. That's on Route 66, 1 block south, 1 block west. He built it himself. He was very talented. My mother and father were very talented. He made it out of adobe. He made it for a pool hall, billiards. Then my father saw that the ethnic people did not have a place to get a haircut, so he started cutting hair on a chair, on a stool. He started cutting hair. He taught himself the barber profession. So in 1926, he bought this chair. April the 10th, 1926, for $194. The invoice is right there. He taught himself the barber profession.
I ask Angel which famous people he has cut the hair of here.
That a person sits on my chair for a haircut, he's the most famous person. No Hollywood stars, nothing like that.
No.
Just the everyday working man. But he's the most important person and the most famous when he sits here, because I will give him everything that I know for his money. My dream for Route 66 has been living in my brains for 30 years. The beautiful, beautiful, happy, appreciative people that come to travel Route 66, that come to Seligman, they keep coming and coming and coming. And my dream is that they will keep on coming forever, because Route 66 is America of yesterday, a highway of yesterday, and people are looking for yesterday. National and international people are all looking for yesterday. And I'm so happy.
Oh, kind.
We chatted a little about both of our families. This interview left a lasting impression on me.
I am so happy that you're doing this interview.
I would like to say a big thank you, and I'm happy to have been able to get to know such a great character and
To
person.
you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
I hope I have now told you the whole story of the most famous chair on Route 66 and the Delgadillo family. To process everything and let it all sink in, I took a little walk around Seligman with a smile on my face and looked at some of the historic buildings. Even though tour buses full of visitors come to the small town every day, there are still some places that are definitely worth visiting. The town of Seligman was nicknamed the birthplace of the historic Route 66, especially because Angel Delgadillo convinced the state of Arizona to declare Route 66 a historic highway. The media-effective fun run also came from his idea. He wanted to bring the slowness on the historic road back into the conscience of travelers. For some, it is a kind of cult and place of pilgrimage. The fast food restaurant, the Snow-Capped Drive-In, which was built and opened by Angel's brother Juan Delgadillo in 1953, is now run by John the son. His slogan is that they have the best burgers in the world. Like his father, who was called the clown of Route 66, John entertains the guests with original sayings and jokes while they order.
Morning.
Burger.
You want to look?
Here you can even get cheeseburgers with cheese or dead chicken in the burger. The humor continues on the menu. The whole family is now carrying on the snow-capped tradition.
Any fries?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Fries.
Want to drink? Whiskey?
No.
Small, medium, or grande? Grande. Mustard? Love it?
Love it.
Straw?
Yes. Oh, no. No.
Try this.
This
Straw.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
They even let me take a look over their shoulder at how the best burgers in the world are made here. Things were hectic in the kitchen, but there was always a smile on their face. The secret was revealed to me. It's the love of the work and the meat. The classic burger patty is made from pure ground beef. No pork or mixed ground beef can match the taste of the original and the inherent flavor that comes with it, John tells me. I also give him a Route 66 film poster from my documentary.
Yes.
Love it? Smiley face for you. But not Klaus, just for you.
And yes, John didn't overpromise. The burger was really delicious. Seligman not only offers restaurants with typical local delicacies, but also a lot of highlights for shopping fans and photographers. Rusty Bolt is a junk shop where mannequins, some in erotic clothing, greet visitors. It is a department store for junk and oddities. These attractions are literally overrun by bus tour groups who are making a day trip from Las Vegas. But it only lasts a short time before the place calms down again until the next bus arrives. At the Copper Art restaurant on February 18, 1987, Angel and 15 other Seligman business owners gathered and formed the Route 66 Association of Arizona. Today, there is a Route 66 association in every state dedicated to the road in each state. Ted's Trading Post is the oldest commercial building in town today. Built in 1904, and the soda fountain that still stands today dates back to the 1930s. Seligman is not necessarily the kind of place you would spend more than a day in, although it is conveniently located for activities nearby. But even for just a few hours, you will be transported back to the bygone era of Route 66 heyday and experience a piece of quirky, kitschy America. A German-American restaurant is located almost at the end of town. I've already satisfied my lunch hunger, but I heard Lilo bakes fantastic cakes here too. Now we are in Lilo's cafe. She is also German. The atmosphere of the restaurant is quite German. Of course, there is German Bratwurst, Wiener Schnitzel and sauerkraut. I treat myself to a coffee and carrot cake, which is not small as you can see. My journey continues westwards. On the longest continuous curve of Highway 66, almost 3 kilometers long, lies the former site, Cozy Corner Park. From here, travelers have a fantastic view of the desert. The 4.2 meter high green head in Tiki style, a godlike sculpture, was only installed in 2004 by a local artist. It is made of cement, wire mesh fence and styrofoam. Other works of art are scattered throughout the property where the trailer park once was. It is a kind of open-air art exhibition. The main building dates back to 1960 and belonged to a restaurant chain at the time. The stop here doesn't have much to do with the real history of the Route 66 relics, but it is definitely a change of pace. Route 66 was once the escape route to the west. Farmers who survived the Dust Bowl headed for California with their belongings. They heard about this promised land. The farmers there needed workers to help them bring in their crops. The Cowgirls Trading Post, signpost. It appears in all books about the Mother Road. A signpost on the windshield of a rusty classic. The rusty relic is parked at a gas station that is still in operation. Cruise in 66 has a number of motifs for travelers. Most of the towns along Route 66 were founded because there were stops and sidings for the railroad. Truxton was one of them. A dam was to be built in the area in 1951, so some people settled here next to the railroad line. Although the dam was never built because environmentalists protested too strongly, they stayed. The town boomed and Route 66 became their main source of income. Cafes, gas stations and auto repair shops were built. The Frontier Motel and Cafe was also built in the 1950s with 9 overnight units and remained in operation until 2012. The mural and neon billboard are still in good condition. Below Truxton are the Grand Canyon Caves, a privately run attraction where travelers can stay in a 70-meter deep cave suite for $1,000. The town did well until the highway opened in 1978. After that, the town became a ghost town. Today, there are only a few people who cater to road trip tourists. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 allocated billions of dollars for the construction of interstate highways. The new highway system was to meet new design standards that called for limited access at least 2 lanes in each direction, and bypasses around all towns and villages along the route. Work soon began on the new highway, now called Interstate 40, and the demise of Route 66 was sealed. Here are still some relics on this stretch of road that are worth a quick stop. Therefore, travelers should drive a little slower so as not to miss anything. Hackberry is located on the longest continuous stretch of historic Route 66 that still exists today. The former mountain village of Hackberry consists of a few scattered houses and dirt roads. The Hackberry General Store was closed and weathering when the famous Route 66 artist Bob Waldmeyer passed by in his VW bus T2 camper. The store was closed the same year when the highway bypassed the town of Hackberry. It closed in 1978. The old Tin Lizzie, as she is affectionately called, is a Ford Model T. The name Tin Lizzie translates as Tinny Girl. It is generally regarded as the first automobile affordable for the masses. It was the first car to be manufactured on assembly lines. Between 1907 and 1927, 15 million of this model were built. It was the best-selling automobile in the world until it was replaced by the VW Beetle. The car, built by the Ford Motor Company, was built in various types. The first was called Model A. The following models then bore the letters of the alphabet, but many never made it beyond the prototype stage. They were known for their ease of use and repairability. There was no cooling water, oil filter, oil dipstick, or fuel pump. Owners could order spare parts from a hardware store. The body was available from the factory in various versions: coupe, convertible, touring, sedan, and truck. The engine had a displacement of 2.9 liters and 20 horsepower. It reached a speed of 67 kilometers per hour. Between 1915 and 1925, there were only black bodies, as only one paint line was needed, and the black paint was cheap and long-lasting. Tin Lizzie cost $850 at the time, which would be $24,000 today. Even then, it mastered the challenges of driving through water or bad mountain roads during test drives. Built in 1934 as a general store with a Conoco gas station, the Hackberry store has stood the test of time. After purchasing it in 1992, Bob left the store as he found it. For 14 years, it belonged to nature and its reptiles. He ran the gift shop and information center until 1998. He only sold on the condition that the run-down charm of the store be preserved. John and Carrie Pritchard then sold souvenirs, memorabilia, ice cream, sodas, root beer, and coffee. Amy Franklin, who worked for the Pritchards, took over the trading post from John and Carrie in 2016, also on the condition that nothing be changed or beautified. He took John's historic red Corvette, which was actually an inseparable part of the store, with him. The store is somehow an unofficial community center because the mail for the few locals living in the area is simply left here. Amy said that in the summer months, There are easily 300 visitors here every day. The whole place is often visited by advertising agencies, influencers, and amateur photographers. Everyone can find a subject for their picture here. Somehow the store looks as if everything decorative was glued together with a hot glue gun. Vintage boards, signs, a former car repair shop with complete workshop equipment. Mechanics once fought feverishly to get broken cars and trucks back on the road. The general store was once the lifeline for a few dozen people who lived in the area and worked in the silver mines. Behind the store and the workshop, there were also tourist huts and even a music hall where people met for music and dancing. There are rare items and just plain junk lying around here. It is somehow a wonderland of kitschy American culture. The Pritchards have always had a heart for animals. Many strays came by and found a home here. After their deaths, each of them was given a place under a shady tree near the store. Ruby the donkey. He does his job as a daily greeter of travelers. Playboy, pin-up models, and American Airlines have all been here and used the unique backdrop. The business not only survived, but is thriving. Even though the well-preserved Mobile Gas Pegasus sign on the roof and the historic gas pumps in front of the store are still there, there hasn't been any gasoline for a long time. A nostalgic payphone, which is still in use today, is the only outside connection, as there is no cell phone reception in this area. When the motorways came into operation, the authorities raised the speed limit. Nevertheless, the slower journey on the historic route was still an adventure and somehow meant a bit of freedom. On my journey through the barren landscape, I came across a few other means of transport, more and more often. Boneyard, or translated bone fields. These are places where planes go to die. On my trip along Route 66, I found several boneyards. They are also known as aircraft graveyards. They are areas usually on the edge of airfields where planes are either parked while temporarily not in use or dismantled and destroyed. The airport in Victorville has a lot of space and offers a dry climate for parking planes. During the COVID pandemic, some airlines parked their planes here and some companies even parked their entire fleet here. They were kept clean and operational here. The Australian airline Qantas even parked the Airbus A380 on the dry, dusty ground because there was no longer any demand. But I don't just find operational planes here. Mainly passenger planes are parked here. Some companies are busy dismantling discarded planes into their components. But my urge to show you more of the boneyards is stopped by a small component of an airplane. Tires broken, Babette broken, everything broken. While driving around the airplane graveyard, I think I drove a screw into one of my Mustang's tires. I was lucky because there was a car repair shop right next door and Joe. But the temperatures of 46 degrees also took a toll on my circulation. Luckily, we ended up in the tire repair shop. They are helping us now. Joe helped my Mustang and immediately said it was no problem. They found the pressure loss and started to repair it. That's the culprit. It was in the tire. The screw is hot. You have to be able to drive it into the tire. A considerable screw that we involuntarily took with us. I thought I needed a new tire, but Joe immediately said, no, we can fix it. To me, the repair looked like I was fixing my bicycle tire like I did back then. I made it clear to him that I still had a long journey ahead of me. He smiled and said no problem. It didn't take long before I got ready to use the impact wrench. After a quick check in the water bath, Joe screwed the tire back onto my Mustang. When I asked for the bill, he said $20. I was happy and gave him a big tip, and the tire really lasted until the end of my trip. I found the second aircraft graveyard in Goodyear. The airport was initially opened in the 1940s as a naval air facility. After the end of World War II, the military airfield was mainly used to park surplus or outdated aircraft from the Navy, Marines and Coast Guard. Lufthansa's airline training center has been located there since 1970. Since the 1990s, Goodyear has been increasingly used as a parking space for long-term parked commercial aircraft, and also as an aircraft graveyard for scrapping. Ford built tri-motors into his transport planes. Aviation legends such as Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart took to the skies in such models. The Ford trimotor changed flying forever. With the trimotors, an engine could fail at any time, but the plane could still fly and land safely. Ford's most beautiful plane, also known as the Tin Goose, was introduced in the early 1920s and ended up with almost 200 planes in 1933. The plane was given the nickname as a reference to the Model T's nickname, Thin Lizzy. The Ford Motor Company was not only heavily involved in automobile manufacturing, but also in the production of civil and military aircraft. By 1945, Ford had produced 70% of the B-24 bombers for the War Department. In addition to Ford, Douglas, Convair, and North American also built the bombers. The B-24 is considered to be the most produced heavy bomber in history. The bomber had a deep fuselage and a large bomb bay with sliding doors. It was the most complicated and expensive aircraft known to date. It was used in the European theater of war and in the Pacific War. The bomber's flight characteristics were not particularly popular with its pilots, however. It had high control forces, was considered cumbersome and difficult to fly in formation. However, in experienced hands, it proved to be a stable bomber platform. high number of production meant that there were 5 locations where the bomber was built. The decisive battle of the Second World War was clearly fought in the area of armaments production. No power involved in the conflict could even remotely keep up with US armaments production. "600 kilometers further on, I find the next aircraft graveyard in Roswell. The civil airlines used the boneyards as a parking lot, especially after September 11th and during the corona crisis. Parking fees here at the aircraft graveyards are much cheaper than the parking fees at the airports. There is a very special aircraft here. Elvis Presley's 1962 Lockheed Jetstar was abandoned here at the Roswell Airport in 1992. It sits next to the runway with flat tires. On what would have been Presley's 88th birthday, the plane was sold for $234,000 at the Mecum-Kissimmee Collector Car Auction in Florida. Although it is in a painful condition, it immediately showed signs of life after the generator was plugged in. The television, RCA video recorder, radio with cassette player, microwave, landing and taxi lights, and the onboard electronics, right down to the windshield wipers, immediately did what they were installed for. Communication via radio with the tower worked immediately. There was even fuel in some of the tanks. The logbook showed that it was last flown in 1983. However, the 4 jet turbines are missing. The new owner, a former Air Force pilot, said that it was one of the best moments of his life when he inspected the jet after the auction. He bought the jet by telephone bid without having seen it in person beforehand. Elvis Presley bought the plane 6 months before his death for $840,000 as his 3rd plane. The jet could fly at a speed of 900 kilometers per hour and had a range of 4,000 kilometers. The red and silver jet has an interior that was fit for a king back then. Red velvet upholstery and gold-colored fittings take you back to Presley's heyday. The interior with velvet armchairs, gold seatbelt buckles and faucets is still intact. In fact, no rodent traces were found inside. Only around 200 of these private jets were built. In order to get the jet back into the air, it would need at least $5 million for restoration, as well as the 4 engines. The existing purchase contract, signed by Elvis and his father Vernon, was also handed over. The biggest problem, however, is complying with the noise regulations for the engines. There are no silencers for this model, so it would never get a flight license. Elvis's look-alike was then mounted on a mobile camper chassis and is then shown to the public at car shows. This means that the fuselage of Elvis' plane is now a mobile vehicle, a mobile museum, so to speak. Of course, that only works in America. Graceland wants nothing to do with the Elvis mobile. AMARC is the name of this aircraft graveyard. It is the largest boneyard in the world. It is located near Tucson in Arizona. Almost 5,000 retired or newly delivered aircraft from the US Air Force and NASA stand here in the sun. On an area the equivalent of 1,400 football fields. Everything is here, from B-53 bombers and helicopters to the F-14 Tomcat, known from the Hollywood film Top Gun. Almost exclusively military aircraft are here, but not only retired aircraft, but also machines that were parked here directly from the assembly line, because too many were ordered or because not all of them were put into service. Most of the time, these machines are dismantled and all spare parts are stored for the military machines that are still in service, in case instruments or other parts stop working and need to be replaced. The empty aluminum shell is then sent to scrap dealers who then melt down the aluminum and sell it on. Certain aircraft are simply preserved and wait to be used anywhere in the world. It is not uncommon for them to be made airworthy again and shipped or transported from here all over the world. Rain is a foreign word here. When I visited, it was just 43 degrees in the morning. No rain, low humidity and dryness are the best properties for storing aircraft and protecting them from rusting. The dryness also turns the ground, which is called caliche, into a concrete slab. This allows the technicians to maneuver and park the aircraft without them sinking or having to build roads. It is important that they are completely tightly packed because the fine desert sand can do them a lot of damage. But it is not just the sand that is kept out, the wildlife too. Almost every type of aircraft that the US Air Force has used since the Second World War is located here. Right next to the boneyard is an aircraft museum with several hangars and a large outdoor area. Here you can find the original F-14 Tomcat that Maverick, played by Tom Cruise, flew in the film Top Gun. The museum opened in 1976 and has over 400 historic aircraft on display. 3 of the 6 hangars are dedicated to World War II. There is an Aviation Hall of Fame that honors notable Arizona aviators, one of the largest and most diverse aviation museums in the world. The artifact collection includes over 125,000 artifacts, including archives and photo collections that cover the age of aviation and space travel from 1903 to the present. The list of aircraft on display is extensive and some are the last surviving examples or even unique pieces. A B-24 Liberator bomber built by the Ford Motor Company with nose art on the fuselage. Nose art is painting on the fuselage of an aircraft. It was used for decorative purposes. The first graffiti was seen on an Italian aircraft in World War I in 1913. It was a sea monster. There were cartoons, pin-ups, and symbols of patriotism and good luck on the noses of aircraft. It boosted the crew's morale and pride. but it was also a practical reason to distinguish friend from foe. Special units usually use names of vengeful gods. Nose art is predominantly a military tradition. The museum is particularly proud of its collection of former presidential aircraft. The Lockheed Constellation on display here transported Dwight D. Eisenhower when he was still a general, or the Douglas, which was used to transport Lyndon B. Johnson and John F. Kennedy. The successor to the role of Air Force One, a Boeing, is also represented in Arizona. With so much dry history and desert sand, I want to show you a secret tip, a giant frost-top mug. It was put up in 1954 and is used for advertising. Frost-top root beer has been around since 1926 and is the creamiest root beer in America. The original root beer recipe contains 22 original flavors. Cheers! The last aircraft graveyard is located exactly on the historic route of Route 66 and is located at the still operating Kingman Airport. Bugs Bunny is the base's official mascot. The Army Air Force Flight School was established at the beginning of World War II as a training base for air gunners. Its main task was to train gunners for the B-17 Flying Fortress. The airfield trained 35,000 people here. After the peace treaties were signed, surplus aircraft were stored all over the country. It is said that over 115,000 aircraft were stored there. Kingman as Camp Number 41 was chosen as the location because of the good, dry weather and the huge open spaces. 5,500 aircraft stood here in the desert sun. The military built 300,000 military aircraft for the Second World War. Only 150,000 of them were used. When the military aircraft arrived here, the first thing that was done was to remove the fuel and ammunition. Then the aircraft engines were removed, then the innards such as radios, oxygen equipment and instruments. Finally, the aluminum fuselages were cut into pieces. 35 aircraft a day were processed here after the war, and the metal was melted in 3 furnaces. Some of the Rosinenbomber aircraft that played a decisive role in the Berlin airlift were also stationed here. They supplied the people of Berlin with food. At that time, there were also auctions here on the square where decommissioned aircraft were auctioned off for the price of a small car. The sale of the surplus aircraft and helicopters was completed in 1947. In In 1948, the airfield was returned to the city as a municipal airport. Then the sandy, solid ground served as a parking lot for aircraft. For example, 38 heavy Convair B-32 bombers of the military came to Kingman straight from the assembly line in Fort Worth. The mascot Bugs Bunny was not chosen by chance because there was a large population of the long-eared animals here among the aircraft. Today, the majority of the aircraft here are commercial aircraft from all airlines. The engines have been removed and windows and tires are covered for protection. Commercial aircraft have a limited lifespan. Some jet aircraft are temporarily taken out of service and must be parked in a dry environment until they can be put back into service. There are various reasons why they were parked there: scrapping, parts donations, or simply parking and storage for later use. Only 10% of these manage to take off again. Ultimately, however, they all have to be taken out of service, and so they come here to die. In the next episode, I visit Old Man, a mining village with a historic hotel, Needles, the hottest city in the USA, and the City of Lights, Las Vegas in Nevada.